Of course I do. I love stories far too much to keep them to myself. Everyone should be able to benefit from them, I think.
Yes.
Which one?
Do you know anything about the Dalish?
I know little about your people, but I may be misinformed, and I would hate to offend you.
That's fine. I would not be offended.
I have heard a little about how the elves gained their freedom from the Tevinter Imperium. When Andraste began her exalted march against the Imperium, the elves joined her cause to fight their masters. The great elven leader, Shatan, born in captivity, rose up to lead his people. He foresaw a future where the elves were free. Shatan was killed when Andraste was betrayed, but the elves continued to fight, eventually breaking free of the Imperium. The elves claimed the Dales in the south and settled there in a land of their own.
Didn't last. The humans had to take that. Let's not bash humans, since she is a human.
The elves lived in the Dales for centuries. They resurrected the worship of the elven gods and would allow the building of no chantry. This angered the chantry, and the hostility between the two factions finally broke out in open war. The chantry says the elves struck first, but I do not know whether to believe it. The chantry declared a wholly exalted march against the elves, named for Andraste's similar march against Tevinter. During the exalted march of the Dales, the elven cities were sacked, and the elven state completely dissolved. Some of the elves bitterly accepted their fates and surrendered to human rule, living in the human cities as second-class citizens. But others, still fiercely proud of their heritage, refused to bow to the humans, and instead became homeless wanderers. They were the elves of the Dales, the Dalish.
Do you know about Andraste?
Andraste was the Maker's chosen. The Maker had long since abandoned the world when the sound of her singing turned his ear. Beauty, grace, and wisdom enraptured him, and he offered to take her from this flawed world to become his divine bride. But Andraste had an earthly husband and would not forsake him. Instead, she beseeched the Maker to return to his people once more. So earnest was her plea that the Maker was moved, and promised that he would create a paradise on earth if all abandoned their false gods and turned once more to him.
Yeah.
And this is why Andraste began her exalted march on the idolaters of the Tevinter Imperium. The Maker granted her his powers with which to smite her enemies. Andraste brought the Imperium to its knees, and her victories converted many to the worship of the Maker.
Yeah, I don't believe that. How did Andraste die?
Alas, it was the frailties of men that betrayed and killed Andraste. Her earthly husband, Maferath, a chieftain of the Alamari tribes himself, grew jealous as his wife's popularity and influence overshadowed his own. She was also revered as the Maker's betrothed, and Maferath began to see their own bond waning in significance as Andraste became ever more devoted to the Maker. Out of envy and spite, Maferath made a pact with the Archon Hysarian of Tevinter, allowing his beloved Andraste to be ambushed and captured. Andraste was burned at the stake in Minrathous, the capital of Tevinter.
Why did the Maker? But Tevinter is a chantry.
The Tevinter Chantry claims that in Andraste's last moments, Hysarian's heart softened, and he heard the voice of the Maker telling him to end her suffering. He plunged his sword into her heart, and as her blood washed over his hands, he became one of the faithful. Dissenters said that the Archon only converted because he could not stem the tide of Andraste's cult, and was forced to do so to stay in power.
Yeah.
We will never know for sure.
Well. Let's just move on. +3. It's good. Let's see.
Yes?
Little
Something you
more.
need?
I think.
Yes? What's on your mind?
did you decide to come to Ferelden?
My mother was from Denerim, and I consider myself a Ferelden. Mother served an Orlesian noblewoman who lived here when Orlais ruled. When Orlais was defeated and the common folk began to resent the presence of any Orlesian, the lady returned to Orlais. She took my mother with her. I was born in Orlais and did not set foot in Ferelden till much later. Mother was always telling me stories of her homeland. I think she missed it.
What happened to your mother? Why did she leave Ferelden then? Was she not happy in Orlais?
She wasn't unhappy. We had a good life, and she liked Orlais well enough. I loved it, though. Val Royeaux was so vibrant, colorful. Mother died when I was very young. Lady Cecily let me stay with her. I had no one else. She was quite old then, and she had me study music and dance to entertain her. It is unfair that I have more memories of Cecily than my mother.
You were young. It's too bad. She's gone.
Strangely,
nothing
the
of your
only
mother?
thing I really remember of Mother was her scent. She kept dried flowers in her closet amongst her clothes. Small white Ferelden wildflowers with a sweet fragrance. Mother called them Andraste's Grace. They were very rare in Orlais. But enough about that. Let us move on.
Dressed as Grace. Andraste's Grace. Whatever.
Yes?
I'll find them.
Something
she
you
likes
need?
flowers and nice smelling things.
Yes? What's on your mind?
Let's see. Do you miss anything about Orlais?
I miss Val Royeaux. Unlike other cities where the people are the lifeblood and the character, Val Royeaux was her own person, and her people little more than decorations.
Can we go back
There
there?
was always music in Val Royeaux, streaming from the many windows, quiet refrains and triumphant choruses. And always, floating above that all, the chant, coming from the Grand Cathedral. It was magnificent.
Sounds... Never been. Sounds wonderful.
Oh, it would take me a day or two to talk about the many splendors of Orlais, her golden fields, her lush meadows. Of course, there are good things and bad things about Orlais, like anywhere else. Sometimes I miss it dearly, and sometimes I'm glad I'm rid of it.
Oh?
And you will laugh at this, but I miss the fine things I had in Orlais.
Like? What sort of things?
Dresses, fine dresses and furs, and shoes, of course. One can't mingle with nobility with bad shoes, you see. Orlais is very fashionable, almost ridiculously so. But the shoes, living with those ridiculous trends was worth it for the shoes.
Oh, yeah, she was talking about the shoes back in town. I love shoes.
When I left Orlais, the fashion was shoes with delicate tapered heels and embellishments in the front. A ribbon, perhaps, or embroidery. In soft colors, of course. It was spring.
That sounds so lovely. Wouldn't it be hard to walk in? Sounds lovely. Wouldn't it be hard to walk in? Must have cost a lot of gold. Sounds lovely.
I had my eye on a pair my shoemaker was working on. It was covered in pale blue silk with amber beads on the toe. The shoes made in Orlais were exquisite. Not at all like these clunky fur-lined leather boots you have in Ferelden. Ugh, just look at them.
Yeah. I like that. They're comfortable. Aw.
Thank you. It's kind of you to say so, even wearing these mud-covered horrors. They're sturdy shoes, but sometimes a girl just wants to have pretty feet. Oh, I could talk about shoes all day, but we have things to do, don't we?
+1? God damn, I suck with her.
Yes? Something you need?
Talk.
Yes? What's on your mind?
Let's see. Spies.
Where did you hear this?
I read it in a history book.
And did you not think that this could be historical fact and no longer true? Not all minstrels are spies. Most are just singers and storytellers. But some of them are what we call bards.
I thought minstrels were bards. What's the difference?
Many use the two words minstrel and bard interchangeably, but to do so in Orlais would cause misunderstanding. Bards are minstrels and more. Spies, as you say. Some say there is a bard order, but I don't think this is true. Many bards work alone or in small groups, doing the bidding of a patron who pays for their services. If there is an organization behind it all, no one knows who they are.
Oh, I can get in trouble with this one. What sort of services does a bard offer? Doesn't the monarchy govern them? Do they spy?
What do you think? They infiltrate, steal, sometimes assassinate? It depends on the bard. In Orlais, there is much rivalry amongst the highborn. They fight over land, influence, and the favor of the Empress. But they cannot do this openly because it is impolite, and in public, they wear smiling faces and pretend to be civil. In secret, they plot and scheme to destroy each other. It is a game completely meaningless to anyone but its players.
You were a bard, weren't you? You seem to know a bit. You're a bard, weren't you?
I have revealed too much, it seems, but it doesn't matter what I used to be. It is the past.
Sounds too exciting. So that's where you learn to fight like that. Make sure you use your bard skills to help me.
Is my usefulness all that matters to you?
No, of course not. I did not mean to offend.
My skills served me well, but the day finally came when I decided to just put them aside. I found myself in Ferelden and sheltered from bad weather in the Chantry, and when the storm passed, I just did not want to leave. I like to say the Maker brought me here.
Minor cunning. Well, I probably could have done 1,000 times better, but oh well. I didn't get any minuses, +2s. I probably could be getting +8s and stuff. But then again, I don't care. I've already spent way too much time here. Let's see if